Bitcoin is dominated by men. More women in Bitcoin is absolutely essential. Join us today as a high-profile coach, podcaster, and educator working in Bitcoin, helping others achieve freedom. Amy, such a pleasure to have you on. What is Bitcoin to you, and how did it draw you into this space?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Thanks for having me, Sean. Great to be here. That's never going to be a short answer, but I guess the most succinct way I could put it is I came for the money. I stayed for the meaning, I guess, the broader meaning of freedom and fairness that I think Bitcoin offers the world as money. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have had a similar journey. I started off, dabbling in Bitcoin plus many other things. And just over time, made money, lost money, thankfully, I think I'm probably net positive in terms of trying to play that game. But now it's just, the more I learn, the more I was Bitcoin only, and the more I sort of see the wider implications of what it can do for the world as money. So I guess it's money without the human flaws, which is probably the best way we can have money running for humans, because we are all the same in many ways, and greed has got the better of the people in charge of the money at the moment, I think, over time, and it's not serving anyone.
I agree. You said Bitcoin is like freedom. What do you mean by that? What's Bitcoin freedom mean to you, and self-sovereignty?
Yeah, again, it's like one of these big loaded questions, but I think freedom means different things for everybody. Being in the coaching space and working with people, I'm big on, the belief that every single one of us is so unique, and we've all got unlimited creativity and potential. Sounds cheesy, but it's true. And I think just the way the system, broadly speaking, but the foundation of broken money being the foundation of that system, has had us all buy into this hamster wheel where we're all doing the same thing, which is not serving anyone. So the freedom to me is when money works, all the problems that we've created in society downstream of that, over time, I think will improve. So it's freedom from this pressure. I think for my age group, I've just recently turned 40. It's not recently.
Happy birthday.
Actually, it's not. It's nearly a year ago. God. So I'm coming up 41. But my
Happy
age
41st.
group. Thank you. My age group, millennials, I've sort of over the last few years realised that we're simultaneously probably going to be caring for our parents at the same time as trying to raise children. I don't have my own children yet. I might do. And that's a lot of pressure. And I think if you can relax that money held its value, and that you don't have to be saving for the future or investing for the future on top of everything else you have to do in your life, there's a certain degree of freedom of headspace that would be freed up. At least that's how I feel. Like if I can stop worrying about whether or not I can ever stop working, not that I really want to, I like what I do, but if my body starts to break down and I can't work as much, we've all got this pressure that you have to invest, you have to learn all this stuff outside of just doing a good job and being the person and the human, the contributing factor to society that you want to be through your work, because there's this assumption that everything will keep getting more expensive and our wages or our salaries or what we can earn won't go with it. What I do in my work contradicts that, because I believe anyone's capable of earning a lot more than the average salary is reported to be, depending on what skills you choose to equip yourself with. But I think when you can stop worrying about the future, which I think a lot of us do, you can enjoy life. This notion that you retire at 60 or 70 and then you get to live your life is great if you make it that far. And I've personally experienced losing family members much younger than that. So that's a very long-winded answer, but I think that's the freedom. It's the freedom in the present is a big one for me.
Yeah, and it's a huge thing, but imagine working your entire life, getting to 59 and then carking it. That's so sad. Life's short enough as it is already, and then this hamster wheel we're on. Amy, before we dive too far down there, you're a mindset coach, and I think that's probably the best way to steer this conversation, because Bitcoin can be very, very volatile as well. So I guess participating in this space requires a clear mindset, I guess, sound money, sound mind. But can you first just touch on who is Amy Taylor, dive into a little bit of the coaching and stuff, and then I want to dive down into mindset specifically for Bitcoin. And you're very polite in saying it, but you used to be a shitcoiner, and now you've gone Bitcoiner. I read in between the lines. I used to be a shitcoiner as well, and you realise very quickly that it's a mind virus when you go down the crypto route. But we'll get into that. If you can introduce yourself first, that'd be incredible.
Sure. I'm many things, like we all are. So very traditional upbringing. I come from the UK. I was born and bred in London, although I did spend 4 years of my childhood in Australia. So that's why I have 2 passports and now live on the Gold Coast, which is dreamy. But yeah, very traditional upbringing, government-funded education. I excelled at school. I actually was very academic, but never really knew what I wanted to do, so I just followed that whole preordained path of going to college, to uni. I actually quit uni because by that point I did figure out a couple of things that I'd like to do, and it didn't require a degree, so I dropped out and got work experience in the film industry. I was a runner on Harry Potter. That's my little claim to fame in that industry. Yeah. But that very quickly woke me up to realising it's an industry full of people that work and never play. And then I got the travel bug. Did a number of things career-wise. I quite often worked as an executive assistant or a personal assistant, which my mum had a secretarial career, and she never ever pushed me to do anything, but she always used to say, that's a really good way to get organisational experience and get close to sort of high-level people. Yeah. So I did that for a few years, and then eventually in different industries, and then eventually ended up working for a travel company. So on and off, I was a travel agent and travel sales, I guess, and ended up in the corporate space of that industry. Yeah. And on and off had stints of traveling, because that was how I rolled in my 20s and early 30s, was like save up, travel, run out of money, come back, work. So I've done a few things work-wise. And then the travel got me thinking, I really need to do my own thing, ideally online, so that I could keep traveling and not have to keep coming back to a job and just keep going or work remotely. So that's what led me down investigating paths of online business, and I found marketing skills was my freedom into that. So just learning stuff that I could do remotely while also selling products, either other people's or my own, in the affiliate marketing space. And that taught me a lot. I think it's one of the most valuable skills you can have if you want your own business or you have your own business, but a lot of people don't really want to acknowledge that. Like, you can have the best business in the world, but if you don't know how to market and no one knows about you, you're not going to make any money. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've kept doing along the way before discovering Bitcoin and crypto. And that just kind of gradually morphed into coaching people to do that, and business owners. And then the one thing I just discovered was the most common thing that gets in people's way when they do make that leap of faith and go to do their own thing is just the shift in mindset that has to happen, because it is a completely different world. Like, there's just as many problems, they're just different problems and challenges. When you lose that safety of a paycheck. And so just helping people sort of discover who they are again, because I think when you've been on that hamster wheel, you just haven't had the freedom of thought, or your creativity's thrown out the window, or any dreams or desires you had or interests that you had just go out the window because you've got to make money, you've got to pay the bills, and the bills are getting more expensive. So that whole sort of marketing journey morphed into personal branding, I guess, is the easiest way to call it now. Because it's that combination of, let's figure out who you are and let's actually turn that into a business, and let's get you making money, and let's teach you about money, because there's a lot of business owners as well that just don't do basic maths. So bringing all that together, Bitcoin really fit in quite well, because there's a lot of the value system that's shared there, people that want that freedom, but also just Bitcoin itself is what taught me about what money really is, not just how to make it, but what function it should serve. And proof of work fits in very well with, I think, what a lot of would-be entrepreneurs want, which is, I want to work, but I want it to be on my terms and I want to do something of value. So yeah, it kind of the last 10 years, I would say, have all kind of collapsed together in what I do now.
That's absolutely unreal. When did you find out about Bitcoin? When did that journey start, Amy?
I first started in 2017 when I was recruited, I guess, to one of these MLM Ponzi schemes. I still feel a little bit like bad saying that because I don't think anyone involved on the customer side intended it to be that way. But the benefit of hindsight would say that it was a lot of people that got wrapped up in the making money, and the people that got in first made a lot of money. So it made it look very legitimate from the outside because there were massive conferences of thousands of people, and it was the bull run of 2017. So I initially heard about Bitcoin then, but I certainly wasn't paying attention to what it was. It was just this thing that this company were leveraging to create what was essentially a pyramid scheme. Yeah. But, I do look back on that. I always try and see the lesson. And I think had I not heard about that and gone through that and lost, a handful of cash, I wouldn't have known what Bitcoin was because I wouldn't have continued to pay attention to it after that. So lost a load of money at the beginning of 2018 when bull run spectacularly collapsed, as it did for a lot of people. But I still kind of was curious. And I think that was really, that curiosity is not something I would have maintained having lost that amount of money had I still been in a job. That's definitely something I've kind of cultivated working for myself. You have to. So I stay curious, and then 2020 rolls around, and very long story short, it was 3 years after my stepfather passed away and my grandmother passed away, who were both living with my mum. And I sat down with my mum and we worked out what she was going to buy to live in when she sold the family home and his estate got divvied up because he had his own children. Yeah. And it was in that conversation with my mum where I was like, hang on a minute, like, you can't survive on one pension, like the state pension in the UK, because 3 of them had been living under one roof. So that's manageable. But when you still have the same living expenses and you've now only got one pension, it becomes a very different conversation. And I was gobsmacked. So I suddenly kind of inherited what in the future would become a burden. Like she had money, some money from selling the house, and she had enough to buy a property, but she wasn't going to have anything left. Yeah. And I was going to have to take a mortgage out to help her get that property. So I'm like, well, hang on, like this doesn't make any sense. So I basically suggested she moved into a property that I already owned, and I would take her money and invest it and do my best to grow it to just extend the runway before she'd be completely reliant on me. And that worked. It's worked so far. And Bitcoin's been a huge part of that. Initially, I was dabbling in a bit of property investment, but that was very slow growth. And the more I learned about Bitcoin, the more I was like, okay, this is the vehicle. If anything's going to, it's worth the risk, even if it all goes wrong, because she was going to be reliant on me at some point in the future anyway. So yeah, it was that millennial, what I call the millennial kebab now, which is being shafted from both ends, which is your parents are getting older, they need more of your time and possibly more of your money, but you're also raising children who are equally dependent and expensive. So that was a huge
And the cost of living's going up.
Of course, yeah. And the pension's pretty fixed. It might get a very small increase each year, but... So yeah, it was a lot to learn, having done quite well for myself and put myself in this position of being completely financially, I'm not financially free, but financially independent in the sense that I can earn my money how I want. I can live and work anywhere. I'm set. Let's crank it up. Let's really go for my goals. And then this whole thing unraveled, and I was like, I just inherited, she hates me saying it, but it is a financial burden, and my mum's amazing and we have a great relationship, but I just basically said to her, I think you need to trust me on this and just let me go with it, because otherwise, you're going to run out of money anyway. Let's at least get ahead of it. So I'm super grateful to Bitcoin because it's buying us years at the moment in that respect.
Yep. And I think once you spend a little bit of time, something you said earlier, Amy, is you came for the gains and you stayed for the technology or the revolution.
Yes.
I think anyone within the Bitcoin space that's been here for a while, the money brings you in. Like it's got amazing
Human.
volatility.
Yeah, we're all human.
Yeah, we are. So both to the upside and to the downside, you know, it fluctuates rapidly, which is fine. That's a feature, and we want it to be volatile to get to these huge 6, 7, 8, 9-figure valuations people are talking about. Volatility is important, but at the same time, it's also the soundest money that has ever existed, that's ever come into existence, that's ever been created, is engineered to be that way. As a mindset coach, is that something that you think about often? Is it helpful when people realise that there is a sound money option? They can put their money into savings or whatever, and then they can just carry on with their life and get back to work doing whatever. Do you reckon that helps when you are talking to clients and going through that process there?
It does. It's interesting. As you were saying that, I got clearer on why that is the case. And I think there's a real tendency in the online space especially, but also just in general for people that make that leap and make a go of it for themselves. There can be a real tendency to just constantly want more. Got to have more, got to have more. You build a lifestyle that costs what you're making if you're doing well for yourself. And I think as you were saying that, it dawned on me, I was like, the crux of it is, you know, I think what sound money allows you to do is plan ahead, because we can assume it won't get more expensive. It's going to get cheaper if we're pricing our lifestyles and our lives in Bitcoin. But also what you said about you can just save your money and get on with your life. That's my passion, is like getting people to actually live a life they'd be proud of when it's over, you know, like, are you going to get to the end of your life and be glad that you stayed in that cubicle in that corporate office, even though it paid the mortgage when you were desperately miserable and didn't really like the people you worked with and were lining someone else's pockets? Or is it worth, you know, you don't have to worry about increasing prices. So you come back to the present and go, what would I want to wake up and do every day? Not if money were no object, but if I was able to, you know, what could I do that I felt good about? Because I think fundamentally humans do want to contribute. We do want to better ourselves. We do want to be creative. Like, that is how we got this far, you know?
Yeah.
Anything, when you look out the window, anything that's not nature was created by humans because they got innovative and they got creative. And I think that's fascinating, but we're not doing it anymore. Well, some are, but a lot more of us could be. So from a mindset perspective, I think if you understand, this is where BU Get Paid came from. It's like, know yourself, know money, be happy. If you know money and you know what functions it should serve, which is a means of communicating value to one another, but it should also have these characteristics of being sound and able to save for the future. If you understand that, and you can rely on that, which you can with Bitcoin, you can come back to, well, who am I and what do I want to contribute to that world? And I believe when more of us do that, the world will just one by one be a happier, better place and more peaceful. So getting people to understand that about money, they're more willing to then take a risk and bet on themselves, if that makes sense.
100%. When I first came across yourself and I saw that tagline, Amy, BU Get Paid, I had the saying like for years is like be you and change the world. I would have got it out of a book somewhere. But when people are living to, I guess when you said like money is no option, but when they wake up and they choose what they get to do or what they do with their limited time, their limited energy, when they're doing that, they're on their mission, they're following their purpose. Ultimately, they're happier, people around them, friends, family are going to be happier, which starts to elevate everyone up there. And I think that's what we're starting to see in the Bitcoin space. I mean, there is very little innovation going on in the wider world, but within Bitcoin especially, people are really working together from all over the world. A lot of people like Daz Beer, who wrote Beers for Bitcoin. I know you interviewed him. I was speaking to him this morning. That video will already be out as well. They've got a company called Looking Glass Education, and it's free. Like, there's free courses there's free information, and they're just on a mission to be able to educate and inspire. And I feel like even with yourself, it's that same deal. Like, go down the mindset and stuff, but when you have the choice to be able to do it, humanity collectively succeeds, because everyone, there may be self-motivation behind it, but if everyone's happy and self-motivated and it comes back, I think ultimately that's a win for the rest of the world.
I totally agree, and I think Daz would be the first to say, I've heard him say it, he certainly said it when I interviewed him, and I've heard him say it many times, he's a family man. You know, I think the things that humans fundamentally want are the same, which is, you know, love and belonging and connection and to have families. And the broken money thing, or the stress and the needing to work harder and harder and harder is what's taking that away from a lot of people. I certainly hadn't thought about having children until my latter 30s, which hopefully it's not too late, but for a lot of people, a lot of women, it will be. And that, when you stop and think about that, it's just not right. And I think people either bury their heads in the sand because it's just this resignation to that's how the world is, but the Bitcoiners have really gone down the rabbit hole and come back out with this hope, which is it's really attractive, seeing people that passionate, even if they are in day jobs that they don't necessarily like. And going back to your point, I think there's two camps that will come out of Bitcoin. Certainly the hodlers that have been around for a while. There's people like someone like Daz, for example, and lots of people who are just super passionate about the space, that they will continue to work and contribute in the space. But I also think there's a lot of people that will jump on the crypto bandwagon, and potentially some of the Bitcoin people as well, that, you know, they're waiting for this day or this time where they can give up their job and be incredibly wealthy on Bitcoin. And it's like, the thing that concerns me about that is, and I was talking to someone at a meetup recently about this, and then what? Yeah. Like, and then what are you going to do with your life? Because you mentioned purpose. I think we already have a huge epidemic of purposeless people, which is part of the reason I do what I do. Yeah. Just to start having those conversations with people. I don't call myself a life coach, but just give me 90 minutes, do this assessment. What are you naturally good at? Just so that people feel better now. And then if you want to go further down a coaching path, so be it. You want to start a business, maybe you just feel better about the job you're already in. Fantastic. But people have got they've really missed this whole purpose thing. And unfortunately, some people need to get to rock bottom.
So sorry to interrupt you, but why do you think it is that people have missed the purpose? Why aren't people? Because it's probably the most natural way to be. When we're in kids, we're on purpose. It's to have fun, to experience joy. Mm-hmm. What's gone wrong where people aren't doing that now?
The only words that ever come to mind for that is the system. This societal conditioning that you go to school, you go to uni, you get a job, you get a good job. Well, what's a good job? Is it something I actually want to do? Or is it, no, there's these top 3 to 5 jobs that are going to pay you over X amount salary per year that are worth having. Doesn't matter if you're miserable every day going to work and commuting 2 hours each way. And I lived in London for years working and saw it everywhere. And then you go to the pub on a Friday night and you see everybody getting very slowly wasted, trying to unwind or, you know, wind down from their week, and then they sleep all weekend and hit repeat on Monday. And so I don't think it's so much that we've missed it, but we're not given an opportunity to explore it outside of being children, because then you're in the system. So I really don't know what the answer is, but I do think it's something that we're all waking up to. But then the broken money piece, for those who don't get it or haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet, is the root cause to me. I think you sort of feel that way as a Bitcoiner, and that's kind of why I'm trying to entwine it into what I do.
Yeah, 100%. I think, you know, that saying, fix the money, fix the world is the biggest takeaway from Bitcoin. For everyone watching, Amy's interviewed some really amazing people, like the Jake Woodhouse, the Daz Beer interview, the Dale Burden. Like, I love listening to Dale as well, but those interviews people should check out. And you dive down the Bitcoin rabbit hole a little bit more, but I think a little takeaway or a soundbite for people is, if you've got sound money, you don't need to stress about money. Whatever you're working for, that value over a longer term is probably held at sound. So then you can focus on the things that you're good at. As a coach, and this is why I've got you on, because I'm curious. I love always improving myself, reading books. I've got the saying Kaizen. It's not my saying. It's Chinese or Japanese saying, which means continuous improvement, like always be learning, always be growing. It's just that incremental 1% a day can change your life dramatically. So if people aren't where they want to be right now in their lives, obviously they can reach out to you. I'll put your links below in the show notes. But what's the first step there? They've grown up, they were happy, and then they went to school. They got caught in the system, I call it the matrix, and they have been dumbed down. Maybe they've poisoned their brains and minds with TV, with newspapers, with the music and stuff. Everything's working against us so hard. The food that we eat, the water that we drink. Just really quickly, and I'll hand it over to you. Only drink spring water. Get rid of your tap water, ladies and gentlemen. But how can people start to break free of the system or the matrix and go down that path of freedom?
The question I always start with, like usually in the coaching space, when you first talk to someone, I just let them talk, and it's usually a lot of complaining, or frustration. I wouldn't say complaining. I think anyone that invests in coaching is ready to take some degree of ownership, which is great. Because you can't be coachable if you're not. I think it's just actually asking yourself out loud, like, how is this going for me? When I step back, just take 5 minutes and I think most people wake up in the morning or go to bed at night, and there's at least 5 to 10 minutes when their head hits the pillow or when they open their eyes where these questions are going through. But then it's just get up, get on with it, resignation, whatever it is that has people just repeat the same cycle. But it's how is it working out for you, and what's it going to look like in 5 or 10 years? Because I think people forget, and sometimes, like I said before, it takes reaching rock bottom or some sort of loss or grief before people question it. It certainly did for me. They've got one day I will, and then forgetting that life is happening anyway. So you can sit down with someone and say, okay, what's the goal? What's the dream? And it's either so far-fetched, or that they get tied up in the how rather than the desire or the why. And I think if you can just keep focusing on the why and realising, well, what I'm doing now isn't going to get me there. You don't need to know what will get you there, but you need to face up to the fact that what you're doing now isn't going to get you there. And you can have the one-day dream, when this happens, then I'll do something about it. So many people do things for their children, but this mythical deadline of when they'll do it by is moving further and further away. Their children will grown up and move out by the time it materialises, if it materialises. So the question I always start with is, and how's that working out? How are you feeling? Like,
ouch.
What's it going to look like in 5 or 10 years if you don't change anything? And we've just been conditioned to get so attached to things that keep us there, like owning houses and being in mortgages that don't go away because the interest rate goes up, and it just extends that runway, and it's not serving the person who's on the end of it. So that's usually what I start with.
Yeah, so interesting. I guess what you touched on there with interest rates and mortgages and stuff, people are so used to go to school, get a job, get a mortgage, pay for the mortgage, work in that rat race. Everyone else is doing it, and they can't imagine anything different. Yeah. But maybe COVID has done us a favour, because people are, like you're saying, starting to wake up to the fact that house prices, our house here has doubled, since COVID, since we purchased it, which is insane. Like, we couldn't afford to own this house if we didn't get it before COVID. There's a lot of people that they'd saved up, they're ready to get a house deposit or whatever it was, or they have a house deposit, and the bank said, yep, here's $1 million at 0% interest, you guys can pay it off, no problem. And then they've jacked up the interest rates to 5+%, and people are really starting to feel that burden, and they're starting to ask themselves, okay, what is wrong here? And that may lead people down the Bitcoin, the sound money path, but potentially not, because the system is designed, I think, through the propaganda to keep you thinking you need to do that. But if enough force is applied to someone, eventually something's got to break, you know, when they are going to start finding out, okay, maybe I don't need a house, maybe I can rent, maybe I just need to go travel, maybe I need to sell the house and get like a cheap little van and travel around Australia for a little while, wait for the housing prices to pop potentially, and then go into it. But then they're left with a whole lot of money in the bank, which is losing purchasing power due to inflation. So there's all these things going on that make it hard for the average person to even know what that next step is. And I think we are seeing more and more, even the conversations I have in my everyday life, is people know there's something wrong. They don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But we're moving to a place, even like in the last 2 months, the conversations, I don't know if I'm getting better at communicating about Bitcoin or people are just more receptive, but they're willing to listen to Bitcoin because they can see and they're feeling the pressure of inflation in their own lives, I guess, with that. So as a couple of takeaways there, Amy, if people have gone down that rabbit hole and you ask them all these questions like, how's that working out for you? And they're like, no, it's not really good. I understand my money's being inflated away. You talk about this Bitcoin, maybe that's superior savings. Then how's that lead people into being themselves and getting paid? How's that journey? Maybe the viewers here want to work in Bitcoin full-time, or they just want to be themselves and get paid. How's that turn into a reality?
So in terms of the people in my audience, I think it's hard to know because I spend more time on Twitter now, which is quite new for me. I have an email list for a newsletter that's got about 8,000 to 10,000 people on it when it's fully consolidated. And I think I've got two camps of people, which is where my brand came from. You've got the people that are doing well, not necessarily happy in their jobs, but they've made it, they've got all their goals ticked off and they're a bit disillusioned with, well, what next? And so the money conversation tends to be, well, you know, if you could earn the same amount of money or even less money, but get half your hours back so that you could be at home with your kids, would that be appealing? Yes. But you've also got a camp of people that are desperately loathing what they do and stuck in a corporate position, but they're in Bitcoin or they're in crypto. And so they're just holding out for when they get rich, which I think is the trap that a lot of people are in, because it's, okay, yeah, but then what? What if it doesn't happen? None of us know when that's going to happen or if it's going to happen. And who, when you read books like The Psychology of Money and just understand people, is it realistic that we'll get as far as the next bull run? Or is it realistic that we'll get to $1 million of Bitcoin and you'd have held on that long? Or will you have self-sabotaged? So I think when you are happy in what you're doing and you are financially living the life you want to live, there's less hopium around your net worth or this little bit of Bitcoin that you might have. And if you fully believe in the mission of Bitcoin, why would you sell it anyway? So those are the kind of two camps of people. But I guess the majority of the last decade for me in the online space has been just really getting people to just talk more. Like, my brand is all about talking, conversations, communication, because that's such a big part of marketing and business is communication, which is why I'm passionate about it, because it gets people, that flows over into people's personal lives. It did for me, learning to sort of consciously communicate and connect with people. And there's just so many ways you can share yourself now online, you know, through various social media channels. And people don't want to do it. And even more so now, because the world is so divided and social media can be very angry and noisy. So people, you've got these extreme opinions out there from people who aren't always the smartest, but they're very confident. And I can't remember whose quote it is, but there's that quote about the noise or the opinion. I'll look it up and send it to you. But Perfect. You've got, you know, the mass of people who are just wanting to be good humans, who are pretty smart, who just want to live a good life, but they're staying quiet. And you think, you know, humans have always organised ourselves based on what works and what moves us forward because we're still here. And I don't think people really fully appreciate the opportunity that I call the creator economy, which is just literally sharing your opinions, your interests, your expertise, life experiences, and consistently sharing. That to me is actually the future of education. You know, you talk about homeschooling and people are choosing curriculums for homeschooling. There's more and more becoming available, but I actually think it's the creators of niche interests and niche information that will give us the opportunity for children especially to go, I'm going to learn from this person because that's what I want to do. Not that they want to be a YouTube star or an influencer, but, you know, I go to YouTube or Twitter now to get expert advice. And I think that's just what people really underestimate, the power of that. You know, building a blog around camping, or my partner's really into the outdoors, or, you know, any niche interest can be monetized now. But you do need the skills to do it. And I think particularly when you get to a certain age, it's scary. It's scary to pivot and reskill, but it doesn't take long. You certainly don't need to go to university for 4 years and get a shitload of debt.
Yeah. So diving into that a little bit more, you said it's scary. I would label that as a limiting belief. And we all have limiting beliefs.
Absolutely.
Regardless of how much you study, how you work on. Amy, you say you spend a lot of time talking with people, just getting them to talk. Is that what you're looking for, what their limiting beliefs are, so you can unpack? And
Totally.
then how, once you've found out what their limiting beliefs, do you have a process or a framework to be able to, like, unlock that lock, to be able to remove the charge of that limiting belief that is holding them back?
Yeah, I mean, I personally have got a couple of modalities that I've gone and done training in, but not because I believe you need certifications to be a coach these days, because you can be a coach in many, many things. And I've done a lot of different things, so I'm still kind of refining that with my own brand. But I certified with Gallup Clifton Strengths, which is a 177 question assessment, and it's all about your natural behaviours and your natural talents, which when we pull out the top 5 of 34, it's focusing on what you naturally do best rather than focusing, you know, in a lot of psychology, it's what's wrong, what do we need to fix? And it's like that. I just love that. I particularly personally enjoyed that modality, so I trained in it to be a coach in it. But it's one of a few elements that I will try and dig into with people. I'm studying NLP at the moment, which is all about the unconscious mind and conscious mind, and
cool.
Just always adding to my toolbox. But really, what I just try and do is listen and ask people questions, because I'm an unbiased accountability partner. That's what coaches should be. And it's a growing space, because I think people are realising it's needed. You know, you want to go to someone who's done what you want to do, or had the results in something that you're trying to achieve. And if I can help someone get on that first rung of the ladder of starting something of their own, seeing that transition from miserable, stuck in their job, into something that is self-sufficient and gives them joy and brings them creativity. It might not be $1 million a year straight away, but I've seen plenty of people go on to do those kind of numbers. But just seeing the happiness come through, and the, oh my God, I'm creative, that lighting up, that I think the lights go off when we're kids, like you said. You know, we go to school and all of a sudden it's just conveyor belt stuff. We're all coming out the same. I still get a lot of enjoyment from that. You know, you can go and specialise in all sorts of things, but if you're sort of crafting a personal brand, or you just don't know where to start because of who you are or what you're good at, that seems to be something I've just gradually got better at. So, the NLP and the strengths coaching is a really good foundation for that, which is what I offer. And it's good fun. It's good fun getting people, just seeing people optimistic and hopeful again.
NLP is such an interesting modality, and that rabbit hole may be as deep as the Bitcoin rabbit hole. It's well done for stepping onto that path. I've read quite a fair few books in regards to NLP, and probably something that I want to dive into more and more and more. And I think what you're doing, Amy, with your brand is just allowing people to authentically be themselves, and helping there. I guess ultimately the way I see it is nobody can fix anybody else. But
Nope.
so my wife's Australia's. She's actually one of the top researchers in the world for lived experience mental health,
Wow.
and so she's definitely Australia's expert, the go-to person there. And a lot of lived experience, or they have peer workers, people that have been through that journey, whether it's like alcohol and other drugs or addiction, whatever it is. A peer is someone that's been down the path that you're currently going through, but they've been down there, they've come out the other side, and they can walk beside you, not like say a psychologist, nothing against psychologists. I had an amazing chat with a psychologist last week. Incredible conversation. Where a peer worker differs, and probably how it relates back to yourself, is you've been there, you've done that, you can understand, and you're not telling them to do this, to do that. You're just like, yes, I get it. This is what works for me in that situation. And it's more like a friend, you're going for a bit of a stroll together instead of doctor-patient type of relationship. And I think it's a more natural way of being.
Yeah, it's more natural, but it's also more constructive because your friends and your family are they're either wanting to hurt your feelings or too afraid to hurt your feelings, and neither of those is helpful. So I like to look at I've invested thousands in my own coaching as well, and one, for a long time I didn't really want to go into the space because there's every second influencer on Instagram calling themselves a coach, and it's like, well, tell me what you've lived through, and these bumper sticker quotes, and it's like, well, tell me what you've lived through, like what have you overcome? And that was just something in the 10 years of building a business. I think I tweeted the other day, don't bother investing in therapy, just start a business, because it's going to bring up all your demons, and it does, because it's money, right? I believe, and that's what my brand is about. It's like when you can face your money demons, you'll start to see parallels in other areas of your life that we can dig into and use as a bit of a vehicle. And it's amazing what, another level, another devil is a phrase that one of my mentors once said. You think you've nailed it, and you'll go and make some progress, and then it's like, oh, why can't I break through this? Or why can't I get past that level of income? Or there's a lot to learn from your relationship with money. So that's why I'm passionate about it. But yeah, it's accountability. And I have a motto, which again came from writing and learning various marketing skills, which is leave nothing unsaid, I discovered it through grief and losing people. And there is a website called Leave Nothing Unsaid, but from a lady who talks about writing letters to someone who is on their deathbed. But I just kind of took it a step further when I discovered it. Not the website. I found that when I was actually looking to buy the domain. But I just think we self-censor, and it's too hard for someone who really cares about you to necessarily give you the tough questions. And that's what coaches have done for me. And that's what I just try and do for people that are a few steps behind me on a similar path, or, looking to pivot in life or make a change, whether that be career or the way they make money, or, anything that's going to just get someone on a path where they're a lot more optimistic about the future.
Yeah, because I guess when you start diving into Bitcoin, you can either go one or two ways mentally, or money in general. You can either get really depressed, or you can be like, okay, like this is really bad, but Bitcoin is hope, so I can go down there. But what would be your sort of key takeaway for someone that they're stuck in a 9-to-5, or they're a wage slave, or they're just not getting to wake up and choose what they do with their life? They're not intentional. Where should people start finding resources, or what should they start doing?
Oh, well, first to become aware of it, I think, and to actually acknowledge please apologise for, it's my mum's dog making that noise if you can hear her. She's very yappy. The first thing, is just acknowledging it and giving it some awareness, and then starting to think, if I don't change anything, where's this going to end up? And unfortunately, I think I touched on this before, it's like people will wait until divorce is threatened before they address their relationship. They'll wait until they're they lose a job before they look for one that they enjoy more. And not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. I think that the starting something of your own can be on the side, but it's amazing the kind of creative satisfaction people will get from doing that. But in terms of resources, my first introduction to personal development was a friend telling me about the Landmark Forum, which was intense. That was a 3.5-day workshop that my friend told me I should go to after a breakup, and I didn't for 5 years. But you get it when you get it. But it's just some fundamental distinctions, which you can get them from books, you can get them from seminars, you can get them from watching YouTube videos. But there comes a point where I think having another human being who's unbiased to keep you accountable is really valuable. But meditation, I think, is probably my number one takeaway. Like, I was one of those who was like, I can't meditate, my mind's too busy. And it's like, that's exactly why you need to meditate.
Yeah.
And I think people are starting to realise that more and more and more, and understanding that it doesn't mean you have to sit down and go to some out-of-body Zen experience, but just sitting down for 5 or 10 minutes and closing your eyes. If your head is full of thoughts, that's why you're doing it. It's to let that's starting in your nervous system. I've learned a lot about meditation, and you can intellectualize it all you want. Just sit down and close your eyes for 10 minutes and see what happens.
Yeah. One thing, because I struggle to meditate consistently, but when I was meditating consistently, I was using the Headspace app, I think, which is it's guided meditation. It's not... you should just sit there and close your eyes for 5 or 10 minutes, set a timer and forget about it.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it. But if people are struggling out there, that's a good resource. And
Headspace and Insight Timer is a good one too. But I did all those as well, and I've got to the point where I'd rather just have the silence, because I think we have so much input that I've got to a point now where transcendental meditation, or just literally the silence and being aware of your thoughts, being, it's okay, it's human, but you've got to give your nervous system a chance to process them and get out.
Amy, we started this conversation off talking about women and Bitcoin. It's so great to see. I interviewed another great lady in Bitcoin, Natalie Brunel. So for everyone watching, you can check out that video.